Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radhe. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Gaurani
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Rai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Rai. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Rai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Rai. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanacharya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhatari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Hari Vrajaka Ashto Tarasati Shri Shri Radhi Savanish Adhai Charana Ravinda Bhakta ISKCON BBD Founded Christ Save the whole world, Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Nitya Vishnu, Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Asto Tarasata Shri Shri Mati Jai Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. Nama Charja Shri Rasta Kuriki Premsa Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Vedvaita Gadadhara Srisada Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana ki Brajbhumi Shivandama Dama ki Navadvip Mayapur Dama ki Pushtam Chetra Janipuri Dama ki Gangamai ki Jamunamai ki Bhakti Devi ki Tulasi Maharani ki Sama Vekta Bhakta Vrindaki Jainitai Go Premanandi. All glories to Samadhis, all glories to Samadhis, all glories to Samadhis, all glories, all glories, let us be the Sri Guru and Sri Guru, all glories to Prabhupada. I was asked at 10 o'clock last night to give class, so not as prepared as I'd like. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Most verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they start with this verse, this Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. And almost every chapter ends with the verse Rupa Raghunatha Padayare Morasa Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Das. That and Krishnadas Kaviraj, he's praying for the mercy of Rupa Raghunatha. He says, always desiring the mercy. I take Srila Lowe's feet and narrate Chaitanya Charitamrita. Very nice. Tabi Sachi Dekila Rama Krishna Duibai. Tabi Sachi Dekila Rama Krishna Duibai. Tabi Nishtarila Prabhu Jagai Madai. Tabi Nishtarila Prabhu Jagai Madai. Tabi Sachi Dekila Rama Krishna Duibai. Tabi Nishtarila Prabhu Jagai Madai. Tabi Sachi Dekila Rama Krishna Duibai. Tabi Nishtarila Prabhu Jagai Madai. Vaishnavis? Tabe thereafter. So this is an indication that actually all the pastimes described in this chapter are actually chronological. You see generally in the Bhagavatam the pastimes aren't chronological, they're just from all over the place. and happening in different yugas and things like that. But here in this chapter, these pastimes are all chronological. Shachi, Mother Sachi Devi. Dekila, So, Rama Krishna, Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram. Duibhai, two brothers. Tabe, thereafter. Nishtarila, delivered. Prabhu, the Lord. Jagai Madai, the two brothers Jagai and Madhai. So it's giving, there's two sort of chronological pastimes being described here. Translation: thereafter, Mother Sachi Devi saw the brothers Krishna and Balaram in their manifestation of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. Then the Lord delivered the two brothers Jagai and Madhai. Responsively, thereafter Mother Sachi Devi saw the brothers Krishna and Balaram in their manifestation of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. Then the Lord delivered the two brothers Jagai and Madhai. Purport. One night Sachi Devi dreamt that the deities in her house, Krishna and Balaram, had taken the forms of Chaitanya and Nityananda and were fighting one another, as children do, to eat the Naivedya, or the offering to the deities. On the next day, by the will of Lord Chaitanya, Sachi Devi invited Nityananda to take prasad at her house. Thus Vishrambar, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda were eating together, and Sachi Devi realized that they were none other than Krishna and Balaram. Seeing this, she fainted. Jagai and Madhai were two brothers born in Navadvip in a respectable Brahmana family, who later became addicted to all kinds of sinful activities. By the order of Lord Chaitanya, both Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur used to preach the cult of Krishna consciousness door to door. In the course of such preaching, they found Jagai and Madhai, two maddened drunken brothers, who upon seeing them began to chase them. On the next day, Madhai struck Nityananda Prabhu on the head with a piece of earthen pot, thus drawing blood. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard of this, he immediately came to the spot, ready to punish both brothers. But when the all-merciful Lord Gauranga saw Jagai's repentant behavior, he immediately embraced him. By seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face and embracing him, both the sinful brothers were at once cleansed. Thus they received initiation into the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra from the Lord and were delivered. So, as mentioned yesterday, this is describing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in his youth, and actually quite extraordinary pastimes. Yesterday we were talking about the Vyasa Puja of Lord Chaitanya, but also how Lord Chaitanya manifested himself as Nityananda, to show that ultimately all these manifestations, they come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. As I mentioned, there's that nice verse in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, this ete chang sarkara pungsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That all these expansions, these plenary expansions, these partial expansions, they ultimately manifest from Krishna. And that indeed that he is the worshipful personality of Godhead. And this is this verse from the 1st canto is a very, very significant verse. And Jiva Goswami actually coins it as the emperor verse of the Bhagavatam. It means that all the other verses, he says it's the Paribhasa Sutra of the Bhagavatam, that all the other verses in the Bhagavatam should be understood through this verse. That Krishna, this Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, that Krishna, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that everything else is coming from Krishna. And if we understand this, then it's easy to understand the Bhagavatam. And then also in that mood, understanding And this is one of the earlier chapters in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's chapter 4 of the Adi Leela. It begins by describing how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then it goes on to show how that Krishna has manifested in Kali Yuga as Lord Chaitanya. And if we can understand that Lord Chaitanya is none other than Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can understand Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you read some of these pastimes, especially, Chaitanya Charitamrita is more focused on philosophy, whereas Chaitanya Bhagavat's more focused on pastimes. I'm not saying that they don't both have pastimes and philosophy, but the focus is more. And so we'll see, like, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a lot of pastimes, and some of these pastimes seem to be very, very extraordinary. And actually, if we try to, as I was talking about yesterday, if you try to understand these things with a mundane mind, very difficult, and actually become confused and even bewildered, and we start to think that, these are just ordinary, he's just an ordinary person, and he's just doing, like here it's talking about how Sachi Devi, she had this dream, and how Krishna Balaram, they had Krishna Balaram and the Shalagram Shila at home, and how Krishna and Balaram and Gaunitai were fighting over who was going to eat the bolga. And it's an interesting story because in her dream, Gaunitai, they walked into the deity room, and Gauranga was arguing with Balaram, and Nityananda, he's arguing with Krishna about who's going to eat the bolga, and Nityananda, he says to Krishna, he says, look, this is not your age. It's not the age of cowherd boys, it's the age of brahmanas, and we're born in brahmana families, so you have to let us eat the bolga. And then Balaram, he says you be careful here, otherwise we'll tie you up and we'll leave. And by tying you up, what it seems like he was indicating is that you'll have to be the deities and we'll leave. So it means, like, I guess, tying them up in deity forms. Anyhow, so the argument was going backwards and forwards, and then at one point, Sachi Devi, in her dream, she saw how Nityananda and Chaitanya were walking out holding the deities, and from this she actually understood, from this not just the holding the deities, but from the exchange, she understood, because what happened later, the next day, when she invited, because Gauranga asked her to invite Nityananda to take prasad at their house, and so when she did that, they sat down, they were taking prasad, and she just had this momentary vision. They were sitting there as like these young five-year-old boys, completely naked, and Gauranga had taken on this blackish form, and Nityananda this whitish sort of with a tint of blue form, and then she noticed that Lakshmi Priya was on Gauranga's chest, as the Srivat's line. And it's kind of interesting because she mistakenly prepared 3 plates because she thought she was worshipping deity, because on the altar there's Krishna Balaram and the Shalagram Shila. So she would make 3 plates for them. For some reason, she mistakenly prepared 3 plates. And she apologized to Gauranga, but and then I can't remember the detail of it, because it's chapter 8 of the Madhya Lila, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, describes this pastime in a lot of detail, and I've never really studied the Chaitanya Bhagavat, but it mentions there how what would happen is whenever Sachi Devi would make the offerings on the altar, half the preparation were gone. And she was thinking that Lakshmi Priya was eating it, and Gauranga was also thinking the same. But then after this, she actually realized the deities were eating from her plate. And then Gauranga, he pointed out that actually Krishna is directly present here and he's eating the offerings. And there's many interesting things that we can understand from this pastime. As we know, I can't remember if it's previously or later on in this chapter. I think it's previously in this chapter because it's chronological. That Gauranga Mahaprabhu had admonished Sachi Devi because she committed an offense to Advaita Acharya, because I think it was with what's the brother's name? Vishvarupa, the brother of Lord Chaitanya, that there was some arrangement there, some discussion there. That's right, that's what happened. Because Advaita Acharya was always preaching to Vishvarupa, he became detached from family life, and he took sannyas and went away. And Sachi Devi in her mind had held some bad feelings towards Advaita Acharya, and this was actually offensive. And we see that Lord Chaitanya, he approached his mother, and she said that you have to absolve yourself of this offense, otherwise you will not be able to develop love of Godhead. And we can see that there's many persons who, just because someone sees Krishna or someone's witnessing Krishna's pastimes doesn't mean you're qualified to develop love of Godhead. And you look at the pastimes of Krishna when he came 5,000 years ago. We see so many people in the Kaurava court. They actually were witnessing Krishna's pastimes. Even when Krishna came to the Kaurava court to try to avert the Kurukshetra war, Duryodhana tried to capture him. They dug a big pit in the assembly house, and when Krishna came, the trap door opened up, and the idea was Krishna was supposed to fall down into the trap door, and they'd lock him up in prison. And the Pandavas, they'd give up because their very life and soul, Krishna's been captured. But what happened was that Krishna, he didn't fall down into the pit. He manifested a partial universal form. And then Duryodhana, Bhishma and others, who were devotionally inclined. Actually, Bhishma was a very, very elevated personality. He was seeing the universal form, and he was just like astonished. He was so, wow, this is so wonderful. He was actually understanding Krishna was revealing some of his majesty, some of his opulence. Whereas Duryodhana, because he's such a sinful wretch, and he was just thinking, oh, he's just some magician. He's showing some magic. So even though he was directly having the association of Krishna, he was seeing him, regularly, he didn't understand who he was. And of course, we also see with the residents of Vrindavan, they were seeing Krishna every day, and they were engaging in play with Krishna, but they didn't understand who he was either. But there was a difference in the mood. We see there's a verse in the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is also identified by the Acharyas as the Paribhasa Sutra of that book, where it says, Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. So there's this how does it start? Anya Abhidasha Shunyam Jnana Kamadana Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. So there's this point of this anukul. It's like one's service to Krishna must be done with a favorable intention, and it must be done for Krishna. So we see with the residents of Vrindavan, whatever they did for Krishna was favorable. Even we see Mother Yasoda in this pastime where she bound Krishna to the grinding mortar. She's chasing him around with a stick with an intention to punish him. So one might question, well, that's not favorable. She wants to hit him with a stick. But her intention was to correct his miscreant ways. She had a favorable intention. She wanted Krishna to grow up to be a fine young man. And so she had this favorable intention. But we see with Kamsa and Ravana and Shishupal and Dantavakra and all these different personalities, they were actually engaging directly in pastimes with Krishna. Even we see they were thinking of Krishna constantly. We see how Kamsa, he was constantly absorbed in thought of Krishna 24 hours a day. He every moment, his waking moment, when he went to bed, when he was dreaming at night, he was dreaming about Krishna. But not that he was dreaming with a favorable disposition. He was his whole consciousness was what is called pratikul, or unfavorable. He had a very because his intention was, he was thinking about Krishna as, how am I going to kill him? We see with Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, same thing. They want to kill Vishnu. So even though they're engaging directly in interactions with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they have this unfavorable disposition, ultimately it will not bring about their spiritual emancipation. And also we see in this story how, Sachi Devi, Lord Chaitanya had pointed out to Sachi Devi that you've committed an offense to a Vaishnava. We also see, it's a really interesting story in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, when Vidura, after he was offended by Duryodhana, he went traveling for 35 years, something like that. And then finally, after he heard about the annihilation of the Yadavas, etc., then he came back, he met with Uddhava, etc. Then he came back to Hastinapur with the intention of freeing his brother from his entanglement in family life and the kingdom and the palace and all the intrigues of the palace, and because Dhritarashtra, he was very, very attached to the concept of being the emperor, even though he wasn't the emperor. But he was, when his son was alive, Duryodhana was in the position of the emperor, but he, out of respect to his father, he gave him that position. And then same with Yudhisthira, even though Yudhisthira was the emperor of the world, and he fought the battle of Kurukshetra, he killed all the opposing soldiers, and he was installed on the throne. Still, out of respect, out of culture, he offered that respect to Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra was very, very attached to the whole, worship and being respected as the emperor. And Vidura could see he was in a very, very abominable situation. And we see even that when Vidura, when he came back to the palace, he said some very, very strong words to Dhritarashtra. And he said, you're living just like a kept household dog, eating the scraps of Bhima. And this was like a really pointed word. He knew that would sort of be like a knife in the heart, because Bhima was the one who killed his 100 sons, and he knew that would hurt. So he just pointed out, you're just eating the scraps of Bhima like a household dog, and this really sort of shocked him. But the acharyas comment that even though Vidura had was giving these very, very powerful instructions to Dhritarashtra, and it had its effect. It actually woke him up to his reality. Still, he could not get love of Godhead, even though he was receiving these powerful instructions from a greatly realized soul. He couldn't get love of Godhead. Why? Because of Vaishnava aparad. Because of the offenses that he committed against the Pandavas, constantly plotting and planning how to, divest them of their kingdom, how to kill them, with the house of Lak and all these different types of things. He was always plotting with Duryodhana and Shakuni and others to divest the Pandavas of their rightful claim to the kingdom. And even when they came back from the forest, he looked after them, but he wouldn't give them the kingdom. He wouldn't actually have them declared as the emperors of the world, even though we see that Bhishma and Drona and Kripacharya and all these different personalities were saying, no, these people are the rightful king. Vidura was constantly counseling Dhritarashtra. Yudhisthira is the emperor. The Pandavas are the rightful heirs. Give them their due sort of inheritance. And even we see that right at the last stage of Vidura's time in the kingdom, in the palace, that he was counseling Dhritarashtra very, very strongly, and he said, look, kill this worthless son. He will bring the destruction. He's a grown man, and he's saying he'll bring the destruction of the dynasty. And this is the fact, because when Duryodhana was born, he came out of the womb, and it sounded like it was a cesarean section because the womb was split open. He came out of the womb and he started to bray like a jackal. and there was all these different inauspicious omens at the time. And Vidura can understand that this person will bring about the destruction of the dynasty. And he was always counseling. Right at that point, he said, kill him immediately. He's going to bring about the destruction of the dynasty. Right from the beginning, Vidura could see the nature of Duryodhana, and he could see how he would destroy the kingdom, how he'd destroy the dynasty, and he did. And he was always counseling Dhritarashtra at any, because like Vidura didn't have some personal motive in this. He was simply interested in the welfare of the kingdom, the welfare of the dynasty. He was simply interested in the welfare of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Duryodhana always cast him as being biased or favoring the Pandavas, but he wasn't like that. He was a saintly person. And a saintly person is not going to favor one or the other. The saintly person is just going to speak the truth. And we see that when Vidura came back to the kingdom after going on pilgrimage, the Bhagavatam describes him how the saintly persons and ministers respected his words as a wise counselor. They understood he was a wise counselor. Yet Duryodhana, because of his envy, because of his personal agenda, he wanted to maintain the kingdom at any cost. He couldn't hear these words which were meant for his own well-being. So the point really I was getting to there was that Dhritarashtra, because of his offenses to the Pandavas, he could not achieve love of Godhead. And the same thing that was said there was said in a few verses previously here about Sachi Devi. Because she committed an offense against Advaita Acharya, she would never experience Krishna, love of Godhead. And this is what Lord Chaitanya said to her: you have to apologize to Advaita Acharya. So she did. What's the word? Repented. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. She repented against this sin. Lord Advaita Acharya, he was chanting the glories of Sachi Devi, and he went into an ecstatic swoon and passed out. And then so Sachi Devi, under the guidance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, took the dust from her lotus feet upon her head, and this way submitting herself before Advaita Acharya, and this way repenting for her offense against Advaita Acharya. And now we see with this story here, she's actually experiencing ecstatic symptoms. She's actually experiencing prema, because she gave up that offensive mentality. And so this is one of the elements that comes, and there's many elements that comes out in these different pastimes, but one of the elements that comes out in this pastime is the danger of Vaishnava Aparad, and how Vaishnava Aparad can actually stop us from developing love of Krishna. And so we must always be very careful in our dealings with Vaishnavas, and not just with Vaishnavas, but with any living entity. I was having this discussion with someone yesterday about the position of a Vaishnava or a Brahmana. Is the idea is we're meant to be cultivating the mode of goodness. And we see in this world, people are mostly influenced by the mode of passion or the mode of ignorance. And in the modes of passion and ignorance, people tend to be more focused on their own gratification, on how they can improve their situation in this material world. But the fact of it is, you cannot improve your situation in this material world. You cannot improve yourself materially. Whatever's coming is due to your karma, is due to your past activities, and you cannot get one thing more than what you're due. There's no point making the endeavor. Just let it all happen. It's going to come about of its own accord. We need to, the way we improve ourselves actually or factually is through endeavoring spiritually, by endeavoring to overcome the lower modes, the modes of passion and ignorance, and cultivating the mode of goodness. And when we cultivate the mode of goodness, the different modes have their dominant symptoms or the dominant outcome. And the dominant outcome of the mode of ignorance is madness. The dominant outcome of the mode of passion is distress. And the dominant, and this is all explained in the Bhagavad Gita in the 14th chapter. And the dominant outcome of the mode of goodness is illumination. You see things as they are. So this is why it's very, very important to cultivate the mode of ignorance, because you actually understand how things are happening in this material world and why things are happening the way they do to me and to others. So also in the mode of goodness, you can see the result of your activities. I was listening to a lecture by His Holiness Rompad Maharaj a few days ago, and he was talking about how in Vedic science, if you like, that everything you do in the material world has its reaction. And if we act in a way that causes some distress or some difficulty for others, we get a reaction for that. And he was saying, and this is why, for instance, when we speak philosophy, why we have to be very careful to speak what is true and not speak lies. And it's really interesting, in this day and age, people are not interested in truth. Listen to any politician. They'll say anything they want, anything that comes into mind, just to get their point of view across, just to win the argument. I was listening to the ABC radio the other day, and it was the Parliament. I have an interesting service with the GBC. I have to function as a parliamentarian, so sometimes I listen to the Parliament to see how they function. And there's one politician from one particular party. He was criticizing the government. He's saying, they've taken so much money, in the form of donations from these people and from these people and these things. But that's all they said. They weren't talking about all the other parties, because everyone does it. But they're only talking about these people, how they're bad because they do this. But you're also doing the same thing. So it's dishonest, because you're not presenting the facts. You're only presenting one side of the story. And we see, in the press, like, what do? It's like they put this headline up and like, something happens, like something very simple, car crash, and they say horror crash, or, they just like use these adjectives to try to make it bigger than it really is, or try to make it more dramatic than it really is. Why? Because they want to sell their product. It's simply about selling their product, and they will tell any lie. And we see that, and you look at, like, there's so many different news corporations or agencies that present news, and you can see that some of them are habituated to telling lies. Some make some effort to tell the truth, but not so much, But they're all, telling the truth. You go on social media, there's so much of this social media. It's like you can't believe any of it, because it's all just people trying to promote themselves, and they'll say anything. They'll put up, I don't want to get into it. I mean, sometimes some of the stuff you see in social media is just ridiculous. And how could anyone believe it? That's the thing I find even more remarkable. One time, one of a particular guru, his disciples, was talking about someone was giving class, and they were saying this, this, and this, and this, and can you help me understand this? And the guru, I was sitting there in the room, he said, and you believed them? And that's the thing, is we need to study these books. We need to understand what is the science of Krishna consciousness. And then, then we are, if we understand the science of Krishna consciousness, then we are able to present the science to others. But if we don't understand the science of Krishna consciousness, how can we present this science? And this is the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, Yare deke tahe kara Krishna upadesh amara gaya guru harahe taredesh. He said, whomever you meet in this land, you instruct them in the science of Krishna consciousness as it is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way you become guru on my order and deliver the people of this land. So he's not saying just tell them whatever comes into your head. He's saying tell them what's in the Gita. Tell them what's in the Bhagavatam. Because if we tell them something different, we'll get a reaction for that. Because they'll be misguided, they'll be misdirected, and this will cause them suffering in their life. This will cause them difficulty in their life, and we'll get a reaction for that. So to cultivate the mode of goodness is a very, very important component, or a very important aspect of this Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada said many times that this Krishna conscious movement is for creating a class of brahmanas. In the Gita, Krishna explains what it means to be a Brahmin. Samadhamma taposa cham chantiraja mevicha jnanam vijnanamastikam brahma kama sabhavacham. So is satyam. Satyam means truth. A brahmana, some stories that Prabhupada told about brahmanas. There was some thieves and they had robbed some people and they went and they hid in the brahmana's house. And the constables came and they asked the brahmana. He said, "Did you see some thieves?" He said, "Yes, they're back there." And he could not tell the truth. He had to tell the truth because he's a brahmana. And and actually, Prabhupada mentions I think it's 9 qualities mentioned in the Gita about the brahmana. He says of all the qualities that are there for a brahmana, there's only 2 that are prevalent in Kali Yuga, and that's honesty and purity or cleanliness. So even if we can't do all the other ones, at least we should be honest as brahmanas, and at least we should be clean. And these things in Kali Yuga, such a struggle. To be honest in Kali Yuga is such a struggle. People are so habituated to untruth. Even, they call them little white lies. Even if it's just a small lie, it's still a lie. It's not the truth. And a brahmana must tell the truth. And what is the truth? That Krishna is the Supreme Person of Godhead and you are his servant. Give up this nonsense, serve Krishna. This is what we have to tell people. We have to tell everyone. We also have to tell ourselves who we are. We're Krishna's eternal servant. Jivera Surapahoy, Krishnena Nityadas. This is who we are. And we need to help others to understand that. Because it's interesting, because the second part of this purport is talking about Jagai and Madhai. And of course we look back at these 2 persons. They're so sinful. They were doing this, they were doing this. I mean, any sin you can imagine they were doing. And even things you can't imagine they were doing. It's described in chapter 14, I think it is, in the Madhya Lila, how after Jagai and Madhai were liberated by Lord Chaitanya, then the Devatas was just completely astonished by this. These people were they were so sinful. Their glories, if you like, were known in the heavenly planets. They knew about these 2 sinful people, and when they became liberated, Shiva and Brahma were just like astonished. How could this happen? The mercy of Lord Chaitanya is inconceivable. And then Yamaraj, he came to hear about it from Chandragupta, and he was so astonished by this whole thing. And Chandragupta was Chandragupta's Yamaraj's secretary, his personal assistant, and he engages scribes to keep track of everyone's sinful activities. So when it comes to when Judgment Day comes, they've got the book there and say, "Look, you did all of this, therefore this is going to happen." And so Chandragupta was saying, the amount of sinful activities these 2 committed in a month, 100,000 scribes couldn't keep track of it. And yet, he's saying it all became nullified in a moment by the embrace of Lord Chaitanya. And hearing this, Yamaraj, he just passed out. He fainted in ecstasy, just understanding the potency of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And then I think it was Shiva and Brahma and Indra, they happened to be passing in the heavenly plane, and they saw that Yamaraj was passed out in his chariot. And they came, they asked Chandragupta, "What happened?" And he described how he was just, talking about this pastime of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had liberated Jagai and Madhai. And so then they started to sing the glories of Lord Krishna, because they understood this was Krishna Prem that had caused him to faint like this. So they started to sing the glories of Krishna into the ears of Yamaraj, and he came back into consciousness, and they had this most wonderful kirtan, and they were chanting the glories of Lord Chaitanya. So we can see that the actual business, because sorry, that's where I was going. We see with Jagai and Madhai that they were very, very sinful, but in that time that was considered very, very rare. It was really rare to have sinful people, And so they were the anomaly. But in this age, everyone is Jagai and Madhai. Everyone is addicted to sinful activities. And we see, like previously, like even not so long ago in a place like Mayapur, if someone was engaged in prostitution or some drug take, this is considered really abominable, and they actually were run out of town. There was one person who had a hotel there, and they were engaged in prostitution. I don't remember all the details of the story, but what wound up happening is because the devotees were very strongly preaching to him and against him, and he was very he performed a few sort of things that were against the devotees. And at some point, his son died, and this man, he had this realization: oh, this is because I committed these offenses to the devotees. And he owned a hotel there, and he actually gave the hotel to ISKCON Mayapur because he understood that he'd done the wrong thing. But the point I'm making is, even in Mayapur, up until recently, people who were engaged in sinful activities were considered outcast. But if we look where we're living, sinful activities are actually, they're not even considered to be sinful activities. I mean, how many pubs are in Moorlambar, for instance? How many? You go to the Gold Coast, how many people engaging in prostitution and things like that? It's quite commonplace, and it's not considered to be sinful. So this is the background of Kali Yuga, that sinful activities become the norm: to take intoxication, have illicit sex, to engage in gambling. There's a big casino up on the Gold Coast. The government encourages it. Why? Because they're making money from it. They make a huge amount of money from casinos. And we see that they're constantly having to have investigations in the casinos because it's a way of laundering illicit money. There was a news article the other day. There's this casino in Melbourne called the Crown Casino. It's the only one in Melbourne. Huge place. There's a whole, on the South Bank, there's a whole block. It's just the Crown Casino. And the government there had a whole inquiry into money laundering. And this just shows you how corrupt the governments are, and how influenced they are by their vested interests. It is like they did this whole investigation. They had hundreds of counts, where they found how this casino was engaging in illegal activities and laundering money, etc., etc., etc. So many things. And the government said, they gave them a rap on the knuckles, gave them their license back. Why? Because the government gets so much money from it. And this is the nature of Kali Yuga. This is the background of what's going on here. And this is why the Krishna consciousness movement is so important, because these persons, they cannot understand their situation in this material world. Even if they're interested in trying to improve themselves, they can't understand their situation in this material world. They cannot understand the difference between impious and pious activity. They don't know. They don't understand the goal of life. Therefore, the duty of this Krishna consciousness movement is to turn the living entities of this age from Jagai and Madhais to devotees of Krishna. And it's a very easy thing, because we see with Jagai and Madhai, simply by chanting the Lord's holy names, they became Maha Bhagavat devotees of the Lord. And the proof of this is in the 10th chapter of the Adi Leela. I think it's verse 120, how Jagai and Madhai, because the 10th chapter of the Adi Leela is describing the branches and sub-branches of the tree of Chaitanya and Nityananda. And so Jagai and Madhai are listed there as being the 89th and the 90th branch of the tree of Lord Chaitanya. So we can see how they went from being the most degraded, abominable persons into being, great devotees who are being glorified in the scriptures. So a very interesting pastime. There's a lot more that could be discussed here, but we're limited by time. Okay, so I'll finish there. Any questions at all? Yeah, sorry.
In the verse, Sachi Devi's name is there,
Yes.
and is there some
You hold a little bit
pastime
closer to your mouth.
where Lord Chaitanya spoke to his mother She was very distressed that he was leaving. And then he spoke to her and said something like, I'll give a special benediction. Yes, I'm going like a son to get this Dana, Krishna Prema Dana. Anyone who will chant your name, meaning referring to me, Satchinandana Gaura Hari,
Yeah.
I will personally clear all their aparads. Is
Yeah.
there some story about that? The name of Satchinandana Gaura Hari.
Yeah, I've heard the story, but I don't know too much detail.
Mm.
Yeah. But this is the, see, like, the nature of the Lord is he actually prefers to hear his devotees being glorified rather than to hear himself being glorified. This is his merciful nature, but also how attached he is to, it's just like, I think it's the same, I know in my relationship, with my wife, for instance, she does so many things at home. She cooks every day, she looks out, keeps the house immaculately clean, etc., etc. So I just naturally feel very devoted and affectionate towards her and indebted to her. Where do we get that quality from? It comes from God. Everything comes from God. So it's just natural that when a devotee gives their life for the service of Krishna, that Krishna becomes indebted. And then when someone actually has Krishna prem, not only is Krishna indebted, he's controlled completely by that person. And this is one of the reasons that are given why awarding Krishna prem is quite rare, because it means that that person then controls Krishna. And it's actually described by the acharyas how Krishna was a plaything in the hands of the gopis. Imagine that being like God, the most powerful entity in existence, who can, create and destroy universes simply by thought process, becomes a plaything. Means anything they want, he does. So that's an extraordinarily powerful position, and that's why prem is not so commonly awarded. It's very rare. Okay, anything else? Let's sing our song. Okay. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.